Does picking an outfit have you running a little too fashionably late? We get it. Great taste takes time. That's why Drizzly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery, has your back with the largest selection of beer, wine, and spirits, delivered in under 60 minutes. Convenience never goes out of style. So if you need to spend some extra time in the mirror instead of at the store, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you can find options that fit your budget, because giving you options is the right thing to do.
Oh yeah, like when I hold the door for someone. Sure, it may be weird if I don't time it right and they're a little too far away and now they're running. And we're both asking ourselves, is it worth it to run instead of just, letting them open their own door?
But still, it's the right thing to do. So get options based on your needs with Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and third-party insurers. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 112 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, Brandon Yeagley from Crobot, I want to remind you that this is your last week to celebrate Christmas in July in the online store at mistresscarrie.com. You can get 10% off of everything. Just use the coupon code JULY2022. You can check out the brand new Mistress Carrie tank tops in men's and women's, plus t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, koozies for your cold beers this summer, pint glasses, coffee mugs, stickers, and even my own Mistress Carrie Christmas ornaments. Log on to mistresscarrie.com, click shop, and make sure you use the code JULY2022 at checkout. If you're a lover of old school, true rock and roll, then the band Crobot is a band you gotta check out. I had a chance recently to sit down with Brandon Yeagley from Crobot, and we talked about a lot of everything. We talked about the history of rock and roll and why it's definitely not dead. The band's been out on tour in support of their latest album, Feel This, and Brandon had a day off at home in rural Pennsylvania, and we talked about growing up in the sticks, the inspiration of a lot of the other successful bands from Pennsylvania, protecting his singing voice, the band's inspiration, what an unbelievable decade of music the 90s were, and so much more. The corresponding playlist for this week's episode is fantastic, and you'll find it linked in the show notes of this episode. So, allow me to introduce you to Brandon Yeagley from Crobot.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mrs. Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Brandon!
Hey!
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. The sun is shining here in central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I was excited. I have a lot of conversations on the show about the difference between being kind of an East Coast person and West Coast, or Northeast person and West Coast. Sometimes people like us don't really understand the West Coast.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. What do you mean the football game starts at 10 o'clock in the morning?
What do you mean being 10 minutes late for everything is okay? What do you mean let's just relax and go surfing? I don't get it. So are you guys...
Yeah, it'll happen when it happens, right?
Yeah, man, it's okay. So are you guys off the road right now? Are you home?
Yeah, I'm at home currently for the next probably like 6-ish weeks. And then we'll be heading back out for what? We're not too sure. But the rest of the year looks pretty busy for us. So I'm enjoying my time home while I got it.
Everybody's scrambling right now, like trying to book shows, trying to get gigs, trying to find a venue that's not booked up 7 days a week. It's like we went from nothing to everything.
It's a potato sack race out there.
Yeah. Totally. So do you still live where you grew up?
Yeah.
How
Well, I'm
weird.
pretty close.
So where exactly did you grow up as a kid?
So I grew up in a little village of Good Spring, Pennsylvania. There were 12 houses, around 12 houses in the village I grew up in. There were like, the school I attended, there were like 86 people in my graduating class. So I come from a very small town, very small area. I'm a little closer to the city, if you will, right now. I live around Pottsville, Pennsylvania, which is probably 15 miles from where I grew up.
So growing up in a little village like that, the idea of being in a rock band and like traveling the world, that's not something that would be a normal aspiration the way that it would be for someone that, say, grew up in LA.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, like I grew up watching bands like Fuel, like Live, like Breaking Benjamin, like Hailstorm. I mean, all these bands came from kind of similar upbringings. And I think that was kind of, the hero's tale was kind of laid before me as not an impossible feat. So I think that really lent some confidence in pursuing this venture for sure.
I didn't have a prayer, I don't think, about growing up and not being involved in the music business because my mom, and my dad too, but specifically my mom, was such a hugely passionate music lover. Not a musical family, but a family that just absolutely loved and appreciated music. So growing up, was music in the family meaning ability, or was it just in the family meaning it was just everywhere all the time?
Both. But ironically, music being in the family isn't what led me there. And I found a different road and traveled my own way. My uncles played guitar, and through my whole life, my uncle still owns a music shop where he gives guitar lessons. But ironically, I didn't start taking lessons from him. I kind of just picked it up on my own, and I think that's sort of the reason why I held on to it. Because I've always been the type of person that if something's forced on me, I'm probably not going to have as much
that
interest
seems
in
to
it.
be a common theme in people in this line of work too, is that we don't really like being told what the fuck to do.
Yeah, and don't tell us no, because then you're in for a spiteful venture, and the same could be said about me.
Can I ask you why it is, just as a side note, because this is how I am, why is the word no so motivating to people like us? Why?
I think it's because we look for the impossible feats. I think, just as a generality here, speaking in general terms, but I think especially people who search out music that, really like the frontiers of music that people, you want to turn people on to new bands and things that they haven't heard before. That's always been a thing that I have always enjoyed. So I think it's like, the next challenge, I look to the next challenge as something to look forward to. And I think of the next unknown band is to turn people on to, the next unwritten song as, it's the unknown. I think the music kind of helps us through everything still too. Somebody tells you no, there's something about rockers. We're just rebellious in nature.
Yeah.
So
So Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick told me when I talked to him about growing up in the family music store and kind of being exposed to all types of music and being able to put his hands on all the different instruments. And then it really kind of opened up his eyes to the possibility of not just being a rock musician, but just a musician. So having access to the store and the lessons, what started first for you?
I would spend the summers at my grandparents' house, and my best friend in that area, he started playing guitar, and he had an old Ibanez RG, the old starter Ibanez, and And he was just playing AC/DC songs. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, play guitar. You want to try it? And I'm like, yeah, looks pretty cool. So, him playing guitar led me to begging my dad for a guitar. And of course, my dad said yes, because he raised me on Uriah Heep and Dio and Rainbow and all that sort of stuff. So
win.
That's right. So, I was told yes too. So I can't say it's all about the nose.
Do you still have that guitar?
I do.
Yes,
I do. Yep. An old Fender Squire that came in the same box as the amp did.
What was the first thing that you figured out how to play on it? Like, what song was it that you were like, wait, I think I got it?
Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
Smoke on the Water. And it turns out I was playing it wrong for years.
That seems to be like the introduction to guitar playing, is that if you can get that. And what's crazy about it, and this comes up on the show all the time, is that the simplicity of it is the brilliance of it. That, yes, it's that simple riff that everyone knows and every kid learns how to play, but it's still so iconic.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the sort of things that we've learned throughout the songwriting, through our songwriting journey. It's all about those. It's all about those moments. It's all about those singable riffs. It's all about those singable melodies. The music that we still revert back to is probably the music of our teenage years, right? So that's all the stuff that we have learned over the years to incorporate in music, because in the beginning of our journey, we were just unbridled wild horses out there, just writing songs and writing riffs and being bluesy any chance we get. But there's a reason why Don't Stop Believin' is, you go into a bar and I don't care what you're feeling, Don't Stop Believin' comes on, everybody's singing the words to it. You're like, I kind of want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So
I have a theory about music, that we get exposed to the stuff that the people around us love, that gets passed to us. Like in my instance, my mom was all about the Beatles, and my dad was really into stuff that had horns, Chicago, Three Dog Night, The Association, like stuff like that. But then you wake up one day and you discover a song, a band, an artist, something, and you go, no, that's mine. And it's your first kind of step into discovering who you are as a person, I feel like, because that music kind of defines something about your personality. So if your dad's got you growing up with Dio and Uriah Heep, what was that line for you? What was that music that you claimed as your own?
I think probably, Alter Bridge, Miles Kennedy, it was definitely a turning point in my upbringing. I think that, it was kind of this melting pot of all these things that I loved and enjoyed, and especially about singers. And, here's this guy, and going back to where we started, it shows you that some things aren't impossible. When you hear Miles Kennedy sing, you're like, wow, that guy did what? And suddenly things become a little more within reach, albeit, those are shoes no one will ever fill. but it kind of tells you that it's humanly possible to obtain certain feats. And that was me. When I heard Miles Kennedy sing, I was like, I ain't never heard anybody sing like this kid. And, I'm going to take this and try to learn as much as I can out of this guy.
He's been on the show a couple times, and when he's ever on the road, he's really hard to interview. And so I always was just like, why doesn't this guy want to do any interviews or whatever? But then during COVID, when he wasn't on the road, I got him on the show and I asked him that, and he talked about this regiment of taking care of his voice and how bad talking is, especially on show days for a singer. And it really opened my eyes, because my voice doesn't do what his does. Like, this voice ain't singing nothing. It sounds like I've been gargling shards of glass since puberty. This is all it does.
Oh, and that's what I sounded like too when I started. So,
so it really opened my eyes to the challenges of singers needing to go out and promote their bands, needing to do all of those things, wanting to meet the fans, wanting to do all of that stuff, but at the same time having this pressure to be able to deliver. Because if you go to see Alter Bridge and Miles is off his game that night, it changes everything.
Yeah.
So how do you process that for yourself?
Well, and I try to turn the table a bit, and I've been fickle enough to think at some point, seeing a singer live once and just, him having an off night or her having an off night and just writing them off, and never going back because of that one night, that one off night. And I just think I keep that in the back of my head every night we perform. It's just, there could be somebody out there who hears me on an off night and they take that with them forever and never give me another chance. So I try to keep the same strict regimen on tour. What a guy like that constantly and just completely probably sleep deprived. And yourself as a podcaster, you use your voice a lot. It's your instrument. So but your body doesn't care about your voice. It's going to be the last thing that it worries about, day to day. So
there are days like today, I'm going to do 3 radio shows, 2 podcast interviews. By the end of the day, my voice is junk. Thankfully, it sounds like junk when it sounds good. So I can kind of slip under the radar. But I remember back in the early 90s, I went to go see Guns N' Roses in an arena and Soundgarden opened and Cornell had an off night. And I remember being an idiot back then and walking out going, those guys in Soundgarden suck. And obviously I was wrong. And obviously it was just a horribly off night for Chris Cornell because we all know he's got one of the greatest voices in rock and roll. And the next time I saw the band, they were flawless. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was an idiot. But it really does take a toll the more you're touring. And bands outside of COVID, you're talking 2-3 years of touring on an album. Yeah.
And you know what? I fall into it a lot, and it's the camaraderie of touring is great, and the rest of the guys they go out after the show and have beers and whatnot, and I just crawl in my bunk and I fall asleep and wake up early, and and I sort of feel sometimes I'm a little misrepresented because I stick to this strict regimen. I do the bounce around and talk to fans after the show and stuff like that. But, I'm not the guy to go out and have a beer with the rest of the bands and hang out till, 2-3 in the morning. I'm more often found in my bunk trying to catch up on sleep because it is the next performance is so important to me because I don't want anybody writing the whole band off if I have an off night. That's just not unfair. And I do. And I think, my journey as a human wants me to go down that road as well. So it's kind of a win-win.
I talked to Jonathan Davis from Korn and Jeff Keith from Tesla, and they both said the same thing. We can get another drummer to fill in for the night. We can get a bass player. You can't replace me. If I have an off night, there's no show. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, it's just that simple, but sometimes it's hard. It's hard to say no to a good time, but
when you're growing up and you're kind of finding your voice and you're, playing Smoke on the Water and you're trying to figure it out, how do you go from that to figuring out that you can write songs? Because not only do I not have musical ability, but I covet the ability of songwriting so much because I don't understand how you do it. When did you know you could do it?
Yeah, I'll just say I think it's the same as singing for me. I wasn't good at all when I started, but I just kept doing it and I kept doing it and I knew it's what I wanted to do and I wanted to get better. And I feel like we've approached songwriting in the same way. We've always tried to take our influences and wear them on our sleeves, but at the same time, keep a originality and a certain aspect of that and what we do. We want to tread new ground as well. So like we talked about before, the hardest thing is writing the catchiest songs. So it's all about time. The songwriting process for the latest record is that we had all this time to work with. We weren't touring. We could focus all of our energy onto the songwriting process, and it always shows. Hard work always pays off no matter what you do, and I think songwriting is the same way, because some songs are super easy and they write themselves in 2 hours, and sometimes you got to think about it a little more. But I don't think anything will ever get you to that point of writing a song in 2 hours unless you do it enough.
Is it lyrics first, melody first, riff first, or is it a combination depending on who's coming up with the idea?
Yeah, it's usually riff first. And then the guys will send a structure to me. They'll usually send songs to me, and depends on how I'm hearing things melodically, and then I'll regurgitate it. Mostly, I've found that sometimes I can get married to lyrics and not melodies, so I try to take myself outside of lyrics to start, because lyrics can be easy or hard, but at the same time they should be an afterthought because it's all about the melody, right? So that's the way we like to approach it. But sometimes it's like our song Legend of the Spaceborne Killer, we jammed it out in the room and that rolled off my tongue. I don't know how, but Legend of the Spaceborne Killer came out in the room, came out of my mouth, and that song sort of wrote itself in the room. So it happens all different ways. There can be any little muse fairies that you grab from anything, and it happens in every which way. So
there are artists that just think that you guys are like the conduit, that the song's already there, it just needs someone to kind of come through.
Sometimes you put things through the test by writing something and not recording it. Do you remember it? Right. Was it that good that you remember it?
Right. I always ask songwriters this question on my show because the answers are always fascinating. Can you give me an example of any genre, any artist that is inconsequential? It's not a favorite song question. It's a brilliance in the craft of songwriting question. A song you think is crafted perfectly that you covet and you go, oh, I wish I wrote that. I know it's hard for music people, but
yeah.
Then you got to tell me, you got to break it down and tell me why.
I'm going to have to say, I'm going to say Black Hole Sun, and not because it's my favorite Soundgarden song. It's not, but I think just the dynamic aspects of that song, the chord structures, the just the little nuances and just the songwriting ability that Chris Cornell has. It just to cross over in such a way too. I mean, that's a crossover song. I mean, it can be played on alternative stations. It can be played on rock stations to tear down boundaries like that song has done. I think, you might not even know Soundgarden, but Black Hole Sun. And so I think it's just one of those songs transcended even rock music.
It's very rare that anybody says the same song. It happens every now and again. The only other person that's ever given me that answer was Brent Smith from Shinedown. So you guys have really good taste because that is a fantastically crafted song.
I love Brent, so I share pleasant company.
One of the reasons why I was so excited when I found out I was going to talk to you is it happens every now and again. I've been in rock radio long enough to know that, every few years, rock is dead. Here comes the next wave of doubters saying that rock, that it's got nowhere to go. And some people say, well, it's good that rock's kind of going back underground again because it's going to come back up out of the ground, a different thing than it was, which is always good. As a newer band, and you talked about kind of wanting to wear your influences on your sleeve, but find your own lane. What's your perception of rock and roll and where it is? And obviously, where does the band want to go from there?
I think in the early stages of the band, there was this kind of revitalization of the old school rock scene and, boutique analog sound. And I think we will always take that approach wherever we go. So I think that is, the old school rock sound. There has been this like resurgence of originality in active rock, especially. We started this band 11 years ago in the thought process of, well, we just don't hear on rock radio what we want to hear. So we wanted to really kind of, fill that void. And I think now it feels like there's a lot of originality in rock music and radio rock music. You got all these different ends of the spectrum, albeit it's definitely a modern era. You got this like rap metal thing happening again, almost like a new metal thing, resurgence of that.
Everything comes back around if you wait long enough. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? Like, I hope the 90s come back, because that is where we live. We live in between of, the Zeppelin and the Soundgarden. And that's what we'll continue to do till the end of time, I'm sure. But just to see that resurgence in a different way, because when we started, it was 70s, and then we went through this 80s period. Now we're like back onto the 90s. And like you're saying, it's all cyclical. So here we are again with this 90s resurgence. So we're excited.
I mean, back in the 90s, people were like, none of this music is ever going to stick around. And now you look back and see what a brilliant era in music it was, and that people were just being idiots. But you also see a lot of those legendary bands that are still doing it. Stones, Judas Priest. I mean, Soundgarden's almost at their 40th anniversary in just a couple years. And
crazy.
A music legend that I just talked to on the show that I know you guys have worked with, Frank Bello from Anthrax, was just on.
Love Frankie.
And there's a guy that completely influenced a genre of music and a band that's still around, and yet people are looking at this legacy of Anthrax like, holy shit, the good bands, when they come out, they last.
To see these legacies and these idols of ours still out there doing it again, it just kind of.
I mean, look, we're waiting on a new Ozzy record that's stacked with superstars. It's not going to suck.
That's right. Yeah, Ozzy's not going to put out a piece of crap, right?
Yeah. Well, Crobot's album, Feel This, is out. For anybody that has never seen the band before, I had the pleasure of seeing you guys in Boston years ago, but I never got to meet you guys. So people got to go and check you out, because rock is far from dead. And I'm so glad I got to spend time with you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, I'll catch you soon. When you figure out your touring and you're going to be back in New England, I got to get you back on the show again, because I want to come and see you.
Yeah, for sure. It's been too long since we've been in New England, so we got to make it happen.
Well, enjoy your downtime in PA while you can.
All right. Thanks.
See you later.
Yeah, see ya.
There he is, Brandon from Crobot. Their new album, Feel This, is available everywhere, and there's a bunch of songs from it in the corresponding playlist for this week's episode. It's linked in the show notes, and also while you're there, you can check out all of Crobot's links and all of my links as well. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday. Plus, every weekday, you get the Sit Rep. The Situation Report is all your rock news, music headlines, and industry info, and it's only 5 minutes long. Plus, you never know when we're going to release a bonus episode. And if you just can't get enough Mistress Carrie, you can always listen to the Mistress Carrie radio show. You can tune in to Cocktails in the War Room every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern. I stream live on my Facebook page. And you could get a Mistress Carrie backstage pass on Patreon, which gives you all the extra access you could want. Plus, you can get hooked up with free concert tickets, submit questions to upcoming podcast episodes, and so much more. This is the last week to celebrate Christmas in July at MistressCarrie.com. Just shop in the online store and use the promo code July2022 at checkout to get 10% off of everything you buy. The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
The Venture X card from Capital One gives you premium travel benefits, perfect for seeing Taylor Swift The Eras Tour. Presented by Capital One. Ooh, I do love her. Earn 5 times miles on flights and 10 times miles on hotels through Capital One Travel.
Enjoy your stay in Suite 13.
Whoa, 13? That's Taylor's lucky number. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Progressive presents Adjusting to the Suburbs.
I never thought I'd care about gardening until I bought a house in the suburbs. But now I find myself in conversations about liquid fertilizer, and I wonder, am I the fertilizer guy now? No way. Everyone knows the ratio between phosphorus and nitrogen, right? Yeah, I'm still totally cool.
Anyway, when you save with Progressive by bundling your home and auto, that's the easy part of adjusting to the suburbs. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company coverage provided in service by affiliates and third-party insurers.